In the heart of New Orleans, where the streets hummed with the rhythms of jazz and the air was thick with the scent of spices, there lurked a darkness that few dared to speak of. It was a darkness that dwelled in the shadows, feeding on the souls of the unsuspecting, its hunger insatiable and its thirst for blood unquenchable. Amelia Devereux had heard the rumors, of course, whispers of vampires that prowled the city streets, preying on the weak and the weary. But she had always dismissed them as nothing more than the stuff of myth and legend, tales spun to frighten children and thrill-seekers alike. That is, until the night she met him. It was a warm summer evening, and the streets of the French Quarter were alive with revelry. Amelia had been out celebrating with friends, laughing and dancing until the early hours of the morning. But as the night wore on and the crowds began to thin, she found herself alone, her footsteps echoing against the cobblestone streets as she made her way home. Suddenly, she felt a presence behind her, a chill that sent shivers down her spine. She turned, expecting to see nothing more than a trick of the shadows, but what she saw made her blood run cold. Standing before her was a man unlike any she had ever seen, tall and pale, with eyes as black as the night itself. His lips were stained with blood, and his gaze bore into her with an intensity that made her heart race with fear. "Are you lost, my dear?" he asked, his voice smooth as silk and laced with a hint of danger. Amelia tried to speak, but her throat felt dry and constricted, as if she were trapped in a nightmare from which she could not awaken. Without warning, the man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. And then, in a blur of motion, he was upon her, his fangs sinking into her flesh with a ferocity that sent waves of agony crashing over her. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips as the darkness closed in around her, swallowing her whole. When she awoke, it was to find herself lying in a pool of her own blood, her body weak and trembling with the aftershocks of her ordeal. And standing over her, his eyes alight with hunger, was the man who had brought her to the brink of death. "You belong to me now, my dear," he whispered, his voice sending shivers down her spine. "Forever and always." And as the last vestiges of consciousness slipped away, Amelia knew that she had become ensnared in a nightmare from which there could be no escape, a nightmare that would haunt her for all eternity.